Have you ever caught yourself spiraling? Stuck in a loop of thoughts you can't escape, replaying something that happened yesterday, or stressing about something that hasn't even happened yet? That's what we call mental health spiraling. It's when negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors start feeding off of each other, creating a cycle that pulls you deeper and deeper into a cycle that's hard to break. You might feel like you're just overthinking, but over time, that loop can become overwhelming, draining your energy, your confidence, even your grip on the present moment. And the truth is, it can happen to anyone. Is that healthy? Some individuals may brush off this notion and feel like they're just overthinking, but that overthinking is the match to a flame, and it's not as harmless as we paint it out to be. Overthinking is more than just thinking too much. It's a mental habit, one that can hijack your peace, cloud your judgment, and leave you emotionally exhausted. So let's talk about it. What exactly is overthinking? Why do our minds do this? And more importantly, how do we make it stop? We're diving deep into the psychology and philosophy of overthinking, what it really is, where it comes from, how it silently shapes our thoughts, our emotions, our choices, and most importantly, what we can actually do to break the cycle and reclaim our peace of mind. If you struggle with overthinking to the point where you feel like it's running your life, if you feel yourself slowly slipping into the cycle, however you got here, you're in the right place. Chapter 1, Defining Overthinking. What is overthinking really? It's not just thinking a lot, it's thinking in excess to the point where your thoughts stop helping and start hurting. It's when reflection turns into rumination, when analyzing becomes paralyzing. It's a mental loop that tricks you into believing that more thinking will give you clarity, when in reality, it's only adding to the fog. At its core, overthinking is the habit of getting stuck, replaying the past, fearing the future, and disconnecting from the present. Psychologically, it's often linked to anxiety, perfectionism, and low self esteem, where our minds try to predict every outcome, avoid every mistake, or control every detail just to feel safe. Philosophically, overthinking can be seen as a symptom of our need for certainty in an uncertain world. We crave answers, closure, and control. But life doesn't always offer that. So instead of accepting the unknown, we obsess over it. We dissect every conversation. We imagine every worst case scenario. We live more in our minds than in our reality. Overthinking can be loud, racing thoughts that won't stop, but it could also be quiet, a low, constant hum of doubt, second guessing, and what ifs that follow you throughout your day. And the crazy part? Most people don't even realize how much you're doing it because it feels as if we're being careful or thorough or just trying to make sense of things. But all too often, it ends up making us feel more confused, more overwhelmed, and less in control. Overthinking isn't just one big thing or just one thing. Psychologists usually break it down into three core patterns: rumination, worry, and decision paralysis. Each has its own thing, but they all trap you into your head. Rumination is the repetitive focus on negative thoughts, especially about the past. You go over something again and again, a conversation, a mistake, a moment, trying to understand or fix it in your mind but never moving forward. According to clinical psychologist Dr. Susan Nolan, who pioneered research on rumination, it's a major risk for depression and anxiety. She described it as a repetitive and passive focus on the symptoms of distress and the possible cause and consequences of these symptoms. In plain terms, you're stuck rewatching your own mental blooper reel. Picture it: doom scrolling through YouTube shorts, Instagram reels, but it's just that one moment you just can't get out your head. Worry is a mental attempt to predict, prevent, or control potential future threats or negative outcomes. It's all about the what ifs. Psychologist Dr. Thomas Barkiff, who studied generalized anxiety disorder, defines worry as a chain of thoughts and images negatively affect Latin and relatively uncontrollable. Worry gives the illusion of problem solving, but it rarely leads to solutions. In plain terms, you're living in a future that hasn't even happened and probably never will, but your body and brain still feel the fear like it's real. Decision paralysis is also known as analysis paralysis. This is the inability to make a decision due to overanalyzing options, fearing mistakes, or trying to make the perfect choice. Research in behavioral psychology shows that too many choices can actually increase anxiety and dissatisfaction. Psychologist Barry Schwartz, in The Paradox of Choice, argues that having more options often lead to happiness or less happiness because of the pressure to get it exactly right. In plain terms, you're so afraid of making the wrong choice, you make no choice at all. Together, these three patterns, rumination, worry, and decision paralysis, are the building blocks of overthinking. They keep you looping through the past, fearing the future, and frozen in the present. Chapter 2. Overthinking as a survival mechanism. Overthinking isn't just a modern glitch, it's ancient, it's evolutionary. The early human who hesitated before eating an unfamiliar berry, who paused at the sound of rustling in the bushes, who lie awake scanning the stars for danger while others slept. They were the ones who lived to pass on their genes. Caution kept us alive. To understand overthinking, we have to go way back to the origins of human consciousness. Long before text left on red and existential dread, our ancestors were navigating life or death decisions daily. Imagine this. You're an early human on the savannah. You hear a rustle in the grass. Is it wind or a predator? You find a new food source. Is it safe to eat or is it toxic? You sense tension in your tribe. Is someone planning to challenge you? Those who paused, analyzed, and anticipated possible threats, even imaginary ones, were more likely to survive. Overthinking wasn't a flaw, it was strategy. This is the foundation of evolutionary psychology, the idea that our modern minds are shaped by the problems our ancestors had to solve in order to survive and reproduce. Our brains adapted to detect patterns, make predictions, and remember dangers vividly, all to keep us safe. Even if it meant imagining worst case scenarios, reading too deeply into others' behavior, or hesitating before every choice. Those instincts paid off when the world was actually that dangerous. So, how did it help us survive? Number one is by threat detection. Overthinking made us hyper aware. If you assumed a shadow was a lion and you were wrong, you lost nothing. But if you assumed it was nothing and you were wrong, you were dead. The brain learned to tread on the side of caution. Number two was with social survival. Humans are social creatures. Fitting into the group was everything. Overanalyzing body language, tone of voice, and social dynamics helped early humans stay in good standing and avoid exile, which often meant death. And number three was problem solving. Overthinking gave us a rise to complex reasoning. Planning ahead, imagining multiple outcomes, or rehearsing scenarios in the mind allowed us to hunt better, form alliances, and eventually build civilizations. But here's the twist. We're still running ancient software in a modern world. The threats changed, but the mind didn't. Now, instead of rustling grass or tribal exile, we're overthinking text messages, emails, outfit choices, and hypothetical scenarios that never play out. Our brains still think they're protecting us, but in reality, they're burning us out. Chapter 3. When overthinking becomes maladaptive. So yes, overthinking did help us survive, but what once kept us alive now keeps us stuck. That survival tool becomes maladaptive, meaning it no longer helps us function and instead starts to hurt us. In today's world, most of us aren't fighting for survival in some way. We're not tracking predators or trying to decode tribal politics to avoid exile, but our minds are still doing the same survival blueprint, just applied to emails, relationship, career moves, and social status. We catastrophize, we spiral, we freeze. Overthinking becomes a barrier, not a shield. It keeps us trapped in indecision. It robs us of peace. It delays action and destroys confidence. What was once instinct now becomes anxiety. What was once strategy now feels like suffocation. Our brains evolved to overestimate threats because of the false alarm was better than being unprepared for the real thing. Psychologists call this the negativity bias, the tendency for our brains to focus more on danger, pain, and what could go wrong. In other words, we're wired to notice and fixate on the bad, even when we're safe. Back then, overthinking was a survival tool, but today, it's often a burden. Because now, instead of tigers and poisonous plants, we're navigating texts, job interviews, social media posts, and relationship dynamics. The threats aren't always real, but our brains respond like they are. Philosopher Soren Kierkegaard once said, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom," and he was right. In a world full of endless choice, endless timelines, and endless what ifs, freedom can sound or feel less like liberation and more like pressure. Our ancestors had to survive their environment. Now we're trying to survive our own minds. Chapter 4. Overthinking in the modern world. In the modern world, overthinking has plenty of fuel. Social media makes it worse. We compare our lives to carefully curated highlight reels. We overanalyze every like, comment, and silence. We wonder if we're doing enough, being enough, posting enough. In hustle culture, productivity is the new proof of worth. We're trained to feel guilty for resting. So we replay our to-do list like mantras, second guess our choices, and stress over whether we're falling behind. Even in relationships, we tend to overthink affection, intention, and communication. We replay text, we study tone, we read between lines that were never written. And all this mental noise makes it harder to be present, harder to trust, harder to breathe. And the truth is, we're not just overthinking, we're overstimulated. Overloaded with options, expectations, and information, and under-equipped to slow it all down. Chapter 5: Society and the Overthinking Trap. We live in overthinking culture, a culture that rewards productivity over peace, that tells us we should always be doing more, knowing more, being more. Hustle culture tells us to optimize every second. Turn your hobby into a side hustle. Turn your rest into active recovery. Your mornings into high performance routines. Social media keeps us hyper aware of how we appear. We edit ourselves not just in posts, but in real life. We scroll through highlight reels while comparing them to our own behind the scenes. Information overload means we can Google everything, but decide on nothing. Every decision feels high stakes when there are 50 YouTube videos, Reddit threads, and think pieces telling you the right way to do it. We're taught to never stop improving, never stop planning, never stop preparing for what's next. And that makes stillness feel unsafe. Like we're falling behind, like we're not thinking, we're not trying hard enough. So we stay busy in motion or in thought. We scroll, we analyze, we plan, we panic. And we call it discipline. We call it being responsible. But sometimes it's just fear in disguise. No wonder so many of us can't stop thinking. Chapter 6: Why we overthink. So, why do we overthink? Sometimes it starts inside of you. Some of it is personality. People high in neuroticism or perfectionism are prone to ruminate or worry, constantly searching for the right decision or bracing for the worst. Some of it is learned. If you grew up with unpredictable environments or critical adults, you might have developed overthinking as a way to feel in control. Hyperanalyzing became your way of staying safe, emotionally or even physically. Some of it is biological. The brain has a network, the default mode network, that activates when you're not focused on the outside world. It is responsible for self-reflection, memory, daydreaming. But in people who overthink, that network could go into overdrive, especially in anxiety or depression. So yes, overthinking can be personal, psychological, even neurological. But that's not the whole story. Because even if your brain didn't evolve to overthink, your environment did. And that's what we'll talk about next. Chapter 7: The Burden of Expectation, Overthinking in America. In countries like America, overthinking isn't just common, it's engineered. From the moment we're born, we're placed on a conveyor belt of expectations. Learn fast, speak clearly, test well, pick a college, choose a career, be successful but humble, make money, but also be passionate, be attractive but effortless, be productive always. There is a pressure to be somebody before you even know who you are. Every phase of life is measured: milestones, grades, followers, promotions. And if you fall behind, you start to wonder if you're failing. So we overthink. We overprepare. We try to control every outcome so we don't disappoint anyone, including ourselves. And it doesn't stop. Even in adulthood, the pressure continues. Start a family, buy a home, climb the ladder, plan your retirement, and when you're old, you better have stories worth telling, a life that meant something. This isn't just pressure, it's a system. A system that ties your worth to your output, your identity to your productivity, your peace to your performance. In this culture, silence feels suspicious. Rest feels lazy. And simply being feels like not enough. No wonder we can't stop thinking. The stakes have been high since day one. Let's bring it closer to home. You just finished a job interview. It probably went fine, maybe even good, but now you're sitting in your car, unable to start the engine. Your mind replays every word, every pause, every facial expression. Did I talk too fast? Should I have answered that question differently? Did they think I was weird when I mentioned freelancing? Why did I laugh like that? You're not just reflecting, you're spiraling. And the thing is, it doesn't feel like overthinking. It feels like preparation, like being careful, like making sure. But the more you think, the worse you feel. The more you try to get it right, the more uncertain it all seems. You're stuck in a loop, and your brain won't let you out. This is overthinking. This is what it does. And for so many of us, this is everyday life. Chapter 8: The Neuroscience. Let's talk brain science. There's a system in your mind called the default mode network. A network of brain regions that light up when you're not focused on the outside world.
It kicks in when you're daydreaming, reflecting, imagining the future, or replaying the past. In many ways, it's the birthplace of your inner monologue. But in people who overthink, this network doesn't know when to quit. Research shows that in individuals with anxiety or depression, the default mode network can become overreactive, stuck in high gear. Your brain keeps spinning stories, replaying old conversations, predicting future disasters, rehearsing things you might never say, obsessing over things you can't change. And while all that's happening, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for emotional regulation and rational decision making, struggles to keep up. It's either overwhelmed or misfiring. So, overthinking isn't just in your head, it's in your wiring. It's not just a bad habit, it's a neural loop, a loop that, once triggered, can be hard to exit unless you learn how to disrupt it. Chapter 9: Age and its Role in Overthinking. Overthinking isn't just about personality or brain chemistry, it also changes with age. As children, we don't typically overthink in the way adults do. Our thoughts are more external, shaped by imagination, curiosity, and immediate needs. But as we get older, our brains mature and our responsibilities grow. The ability to reflect deepens, and so does the risk of rumination. In adolescence, overthinking becomes more common. The teenage brain is still developing its prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision making and impulse control. Meanwhile, emotional centers like the amygdala are in overdrive. This makes teens more sensitive to social rejection, embarrassment, and uncertainty, and more likely to ruminate on things like, what did they mean by that? Or, did I mess that up? In young adulthood, overthinking can peak. This is when life is full of crossroads, relationships, careers, identity, purpose. The fear of making the wrong choice can paralyze you. And with social media amplifying comparison and constant feedback, the mental noise gets louder. But as we age, something shifts. Studies show that older adults tend to overthink less. Why? Because with experience comes perspective. Priorities get clearer, the fear of missing out becomes the joy of missing out. You start to realize that most of the things you're worried about aren't worth the stress. It's not that older adults don't think deeply, they just tend to focus more on what matters. The loop gets quieter, and wisdom takes the place of worry. Chapter 10: Effects of Overthinking. Overthinking doesn't just happen in your head, it affects everything. Emotionally, it fuels anxiety and depression. You feel stuck in your own mind, constantly cycling through fear, regret, doubt. Your emotions don't get processed, they get looped. Cognitively, it destroys clarity. Your focus shatters, every decision feels heavier than it needs to be. Your mind becomes cluttered, like trying to think through fog. Socially, it creates distance. You replay every text, every tone, every silence. You assume the worst before giving anyone the chance to prove otherwise. Physically, it takes a toll. The body keeps a score: insomnia, tension headaches, stomach issues, fatigue that rest can't fix. And sometimes the hardest part, no one knows it's happening because it's all in here. Just in case you guys didn't catch that. You look fine on the outside, but inside is loud, exhausting, and relentless. Chapter 11: When Overthinking is a Coping Mechanism. Overthinking often feels productive. We convince ourselves that we're just being thorough. The thinking will protect us, make us better, safer, but often, overthinking is avoidance. Avoiding the discomfort of uncertainty, avoiding action, avoiding feeling out of control. It becomes a loop where we're mentally working so hard, but not actually living. So, here are some relevant research and theories that I found on overthinking. Nolan's response styles theory, or RST. Psychologist Susan Nolan developed something called the response styles theory to explain why some people, especially women, are vulnerable to depression. Her research revealed that when we're distressed, we tend to respond in one of few ways. We distract ourselves, we take action, or we ruminate. And rumination, the repetitive, passive focus on what's wrong and why we feel bad, turns out to be one of the worst things we could do. It feels like problem solving, it feels like control. But to Nolan, rumination doesn't help us heal. It actually prolongs depressive episodes and deepens emotional distress. Her theory showed that overthinking isn't just a symptom, it's maintaining force, a mental habit that keeps us stuck by forcing on the pain, but not through it. And it's not just tied to depression anymore. Later studies find that rumination plays a role in anxiety, anger, and other emotional spirals, making it a transdiagnostic risk factor. So sometimes the answer isn't to vent or think it through. Sometimes the healthiest thing you could do to break the loop is step away, distract, move your body, or focus outward, because the mind can't always heal itself by thinking more. Sometimes it just needs to just be. I did have a couple more theories, but I'm gonna save you guys the trouble. Chapter 12. Overthinking isn't just psychological, it's philosophical. The ancient Greeks called it phrenosis, practical wisdom, the ability to reflect, reason, and live thoroughly. In many ways, that's the beauty of the human mind. We don't just react, we contemplate. But contemplation unchecked can become chaos. Philosophers from Aristotle to Descartes, I feel like that's not how you pronounce the name, but I can't think of it right now. It's going to be Descartes. Believed that critical thinking was a path to wisdom and self knowledge, but even they warned about excessive analysis. Existentialists like Soren Kierkegaard and Jean Paul Sartre understood and overthinking as a side effect of freedom. When we realize we're responsible for our own lives, for our choices, identity, and meaning, the weight of that freedom creates anxiety. Kierkegaard called it the dizziness of freedom. Overthinking is what happens when we're face to face with that abyss of uncertainty. Man is condemned to be free, Sartre wrote, because once thrown into the world, he is responsible for everything he does. Stoic philosophers like Epicurus warned against being ruled by things we cannot control, including our own thoughts. They believe that peace comes from focusing on what's within your power and letting go of the rest. It's not things that upset us, Epicurus says, but our judgment about things. So when does thinking become too much? When it stops leading to insight and starts creating suffering, when it spirals into shame, fear, or paralysis, when it detaches us from reality, from presence, from life itself. Philosophy shows us that thinking is not the enemy. Disconnection is. The goal isn't to think less, it's to think better. To stay grounded in curiosity, not fear. In wonder, not worry. Because the human is made to wonder. But to live well is to return from the clouds to the earth, from the mind to the moment. Chapter 13. Breaking the cycle. So, how do we stop? Here's the truth: we can't stop thinking. The goal isn't silence, it's space. What we can do is change our relationship with our thoughts. Cognitive behavioral therapy teaches us to challenge distorted thinking, to ask, is this true? Is this helpful? What else could be real? Mindfulness helps us observe our thoughts without judgment, to notice them without becoming them. Journaling gives the mind somewhere to land, a place to unload, process, and untangle. Scheduled worry time might sound strange, but it works. By setting boundaries, we train our brain to wait, to respect that not every fear needs our attention right now. And then there are grounding rituals: movement, rest, creativity, nature. Each one gently brings us back to the body, back to the present, back to ourselves. You don't have to fix every thought. You don't have to win every mental argument. You just need to remember, not every thought deserves your attention. Some are just passing clouds. Let them pass. Conclusion: your thoughts are powerful, but they're not always true, and they're not always you. You are not your worries, not your regrets, not your constant overanalysis of that one thing you said 3 days ago. You are a living, breathing being. You are allowed to pause, to not know, to just be. Overthinking might still show up, and that's okay. What matters is how you meet it when it does. With curiosity, not fear. With compassion, not judgment. With the awareness that you get to choose which thoughts stay and which ones pass. So if your mind is loud right now, if you feel tangled up in loops and doubt, what ifs, take a breath. Come back to your body. You're already doing more than you think. You're not broken. You're just human. And if you're overthinking this video right now, that's okay. So am I. That's kind of the whole point.